All right, hey guys, what's up? I have Jessica Harrington with me here today, who is running for the Florida House of Representatives, District 64, which I think is northwest of Tampa.
Yep, it's
Yep.
Northwest Tampa. Yeah.
Yeah. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I just knew I had to talk to you
Mm-hmm.
because you really take on a lot of really interesting people, and I'm running against Jim Crow 2.0. So I thought, hey, what better to to come and talk to you about this? I'd love to see you debate him. Actually, that would be like my dream
Yeah.
because he is so awful, and he really you would run circles around him.
Yeah. So before getting too into that, just so people can kind of contextualize this,
Yeah.
so you're running in District 64 for the Florida House of Representatives, and one of the big issues that you are running on has to do with kind of like voting rights or restricting access to who can vote, gerrymandering kind of stuff. Do you want
Yeah.
to? I do real quick. Do you want to introduce yourself, and then you can talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, so my name is Jessica Harrington. I am a school teacher here in Hillsborough County, so definitely not a politician. I
Mm-hmm.
like to just be clear on that. After 2016, with all the bullshit that kind of went on with that, I decided I need to kind of do something. And I think that's probably what every candidate says. Oh, I just had to get more involved.
Yeah.
But really, it's a little bit more than that with my race, just because of who I'm running against. He's literally the most dangerous legislator in the state of Florida, and he's been walking into office for the last 10 years unchallenged. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm like, well, I'm going to be that person to step up and challenge him. So that's what I've been kind of doing for the past year and a half. I've been teaching and I've been campaigning, just trying to flip this seat. 2018 was a big year because we, across the state and across the country, we've been flipping state legislatures. And I just want to make that very clear that I think that people have been focused so much on congressional candidates and on the presidency. None of that matters if you don't flip these state legislators. They're going to be the ones drawing these lines for the next decade. So, this is the most important election if we want to pick what path we're going to be continuing down,
Mm-hmm.
or not going down for the next 10 years. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just, I'm running for this seat, trying to flip this seat against, a very just dangerous person. And voting rights is a big issue here in Florida because we're a 1% state. So, you either open those rights up and let people have their vote, or you restrict them like we do here in Florida, and then that determines elections.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're kind of running on.
Yeah. So in looking up the last time that you ran, apparently you I guess you ran the whole campaign yourself. You just decided to file because no one else was running against him. You did it within a week, I think, of closing the deadline, and you came within like about 5,500 votes of winning, which seems impressive. I know that I looked up and I see that you're like in a pivot county, so you guys had voted for Obama twice and then you voted for Trump afterwards. So, it seems like, do you guys do like any kind of like polling, or are you taking your campaign more seriously this cycle? Not that you didn't take it seriously last time, but do you have like campaign staff and everything that you're working on, or?
Yeah. So, again, like you mentioned, in 2018, it was the week of the filing deadline. And I just could not live with myself if this guy had gotten a position without a challenger. So when I did get into the race, yeah, I had no money. I had no staff. I didn't knock any doors.
Mm-hmm.
And we were in a three-way race. I believe there was an independent in the race, and he got, I think, 2 or 3% of the vote. So, there's a lot of votes there to get. And so, yeah, I'm definitely taking it more seriously this time. I jumped back into the race in April of 2019 and have not stopped ever since. We have a campaign manager that worked on Obama's team and helped flip Florida blue. We've raised about $50,000 as opposed to like 4,000
Yeah.
last time. We have, a great team. We have tons of volunteers, not only here in Florida, but across the country. There are people that want to take this guy down. So we're definitely doing it. We just qualified by petition. We're the first one to qualify by petition in this district in 8 years. So we definitely have the community behind us, and we're going to, tell the naysayers that they can just step aside. We're ready to flip the seat. You just have to get out and talk to the voters.
Mm-hmm. From a personal level, what grade do you teach? Just curious.
I teach 7th grade, so 12-year-olds, and
Gotcha.
I teach civics. And, a lot of people ask me, well, what thinks a teacher, what makes you think you can go up to Tallahassee? I'm like, I teach 12-year-olds for a living, and that's pretty much what the state legislature is like anyway.
Sure.
So it's fine. We're going to be fine.
Yeah, it seems like that sometimes. You maybe even a little bit too old there, but yeah. Do you, if you actually make it into the state legislature, do you give up teaching, or do you try to balance both, or how does that work? Assuming you were to win.
Well, as of right now, I've taken I'm finishing up the school year, so we have about 2.5 weeks left.
Mm-hmm.
I did take a leave of absence from my school starting in August, so I'm going to go in and teach the first week of school, of course, because I want to meet the kids, and then I'll be off until the election. And depending on the outcome of the election, I will, continue the year of leave of absence. But yeah, that's what would happen. I'd probably take a leave, go up. Now, in Tallahassee, we have one of the shortest legislative sessions. It's only about 3 months, and they keep it really short on purpose because they want to be dysfunctional and not get anything done.
Mm-hmm.
So I see myself going up, legislating, and then coming back and maybe sub-teaching while I'm doing, in district work. But I'll definitely be back to teaching no matter what, happens. Just sometime. I just don't know when that will be.
Gotcha. So admittedly, I don't know as much about like the different local legislatures. When you say that they're in session for only 3 to 4 months, like 3 to 4 months they're in session, and then for the other 8 months they don't do anything? Is that?
Well, it depends on who you're looking at. So most of the Democrats in the state, they're working, all year long. They're doing, stuff inside their community. And then there's some people, like my opponent that calls himself a part-time legislator.
Mm-hmm.
So who knows what the hell he's doing the rest of the time, because it's definitely not holding town halls. It's definitely not talking to people. I don't even think he lives in the district, to be honest with you. But yeah, so it's not really part-time, even though it seems like it. I mean, you're full-time legislating. You're ruining people's lives full-time when you take these awful votes.
Sure.
So we need to, kind of fix that.
Mm-hmm. What, why, I guess like of all the issues, why do you feel the most strongly about the gerrymandering thing?
Well, I just don't think that it's right for government to pick who their voters. Voters should be picking who's their government. And, we wonder, I know that there was a federal Supreme Court decision that said, if there is extreme gerrymandering in a state, the federal government can't step in. That is a state issue.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a problem. And the reason I feel so strongly about this is because this is something that has been happening for the past 30 years, where Republicans in this country have had, I don't know if they had like some kind of secret meeting or something, or there was a memo, whatever it was, but they have decided that the way to really keep power and to gain power and to keep that power is by taking over state legislatures across this country. And how they do that is they use their, big business. They use businesses and corporations to kind of help fuel that power. And so the Democrats have really dropped the ball the last 30 years by ignoring these state legislative races. And, at one point in this country, I think 30 of the 50 states were dominated by Republican legislatures.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2018, 8 chambers around the country flipped from red to blue, and 3 chambers in the country went from a super majority red to being broken down. Mm-hmm. So now it's not super majority. And so that's, I think, what we need to continue doing in this country. That's why I'm on this call with you, because I want people to understand that down ballot races are actually really important. And it doesn't matter who's going to be in the White House in 2020 or 2024. It doesn't matter. If our state legislatures are dominated by one party over the other, none of it matters. So we have to focus on these races. Florida, we made a lot of gains actually in 2018. We flipped 7 state houses from red to blue. One of those districts is right next door to mine. Mm-hmm. And we flipped state Senate seat. So we are really close to taking a majority back in Florida, which hasn't been done in over 20 years. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the reason why I'm running. I want to be part of that. I want to take this seat that they have ignored for the last decade, that they told me, you're never going to raise the money. It's too red. You can't do it. This guy's too powerful. His dad was in office for 20 years before him. And I want to prove people wrong. I want to say, you know what? I don't care what you say. We're going to do this. I'm definitely not the typical candidate. I definitely get myself in a lot of trouble. I'm more of an activist than I am a candidate or a politician. And so I definitely, I step out of line sometimes, but I feel like that's what has to be done. We don't need any more politicians. We got enough of those.
Okay, well, since you're a teacher, I'm just going to ask a couple of questions because I actually don't know. When it comes to drawing districts for a state, How well are the districts drawn for your like state House of Representatives? How well do those line up with the districts drawn for like the congressional House of Representatives? Is there any overlap, or is it a totally different thing? Or
Totally different. So, in my district alone, just my little state house district that I think includes 170,000 people in the population, right? There's 2 congressional seats that overlap with this district. And, and you'll see that all across the state that they are not matched up at all. And the reason I think for that is if they extremely gerrymander state house races, and state Senate seats, then they're going to be the ones that are drawing lines for the congressional seats. So it kind of all plays together. I'm not sure exactly what goes into it. That's something that, 10 years ago when they did the last time they did it, I wasn't really involved in politics too much. I think I was still in college. I don't even know where I was. But now that we're paying attention, we're going to really see like how this works. And, again, if you look at my district, for example, there's nothing, the boundaries are so insane. It goes into 2 counties, like and you can tell it's picking where the reddest of the people are, and they're going to gerrymander you in. And but luckily, our district has moved from being very, very red to now we're very purple. A lot of people have moved in the last decade, which is the only reason why I even have a chance in the seat. 10 years ago, no chance. I wouldn't have run.
When it comes to like redrawing districts for voting purposes, does that impact other stuff like social services or school districts, or does that all run along like county lines and everything?
That's mostly county lines. Like I know, like for example, our school district, the school district I work in, Hillsborough County, I mean, we're the 7th largest school district in the country. So it doesn't impact the school districts. I mean, the school district is the school district, no matter what the lines are for these races. But it does impact, who you have in these seats. Because they're the ones making decisions on the services and how much funding education gets. I mean, there's a huge scam happening right now in Florida with, because education is such a big pot of money. And so, of course, there's private businesses that want a piece of that. So there's this huge scam that my opponent has been pushing. It's this voucher program where they're like, yeah, the public schools are failure factories, so don't send your child to public schools. We're going to give you these vouchers, these publicly funded vouchers, and you can send your kid to whatever school they want to go to. It could be a private school, it could be a charter school, wherever you want to go. And we found out that these schools are discriminating against our LGBTQ kids, our disabled kids, our Black and brown kids. So it's a lot of inequities happening in our school systems because of the legislature. We need to kick their asses out. It's insane.
In terms of running this election cycle, do you know if your opponent, so James Grant, is he taking it like very seriously? Did he take it very seriously last time? Is there like a lot of campaigning happening back and forth? Like how intense does the battle get for these like local level seats?
That's a great question. So definitely coronavirus has put a damper on getting out there. What I'll just tell you what I've seen in the past. So I know in 2010 when this kid first ran, he was pretty much right out of law school, and he went and ran for the seat that his dad used to hold, and he gave himself a $40,000 loan to kind of give himself the advantage. Since 2010, he has not been challenged, so he has not had to run a campaign in a decade. When I jumped into the race in 2018, he did not take it seriously. He didn't show up to candidate forums. He didn't want to debate. He didn't do anything. He just expected he was going to win because there's an R next to his name. Many people in the district don't even know who he is. It's just he has an R, so they vote for him. So I am expecting that now that we are more of a serious candidate in the eyes of whoever, I think that maybe he is taking it more seriously. He is, very, very hated across the state. So people are going to hopefully be, focusing a lot of resources on getting him out of here. But I definitely see him, ramping up his fundraising. He's only raised about 114,000 right now. And him, he can raise up to $250,000 or more when he doesn't have an opponent. So I don't know, how it's going to work. But I think he'll take it seriously. But I do think he underestimates me. I don't think he will debate me. Who knows if he'll show up to things. He doesn't show up for anything else, but so we'll see.
Do you get a lot of support from the party? Like, is there any type of broader, like, Democratic support for looking at these, like, smaller local legislatures? Or are you just kind of on your own? Or what does the coordination look like between larger party officials and in local elections?
Yeah, well, in 2018, I was definitely on my own because I got in the race so late. Now I think the party is definitely, they want to focus on these down ballot races because they do know how close they are to flipping the state of Florida. I'll be honest with you. I had a primary since October, and the Democratic Party will not touch you if you have a primary, because they don't want to touch you. They can't choose between two Democrats, even if, so last month, my primary opponent ended up leaving the race to support our campaign. I think because I, worked really hard to outraise him and just get more support than him. So now that I don't have a primary, I'm expecting hopefully the party to jump in. But again, the party might not look at our race as one of their most winnable seats.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of other races. I mean, I know a guy down in Miami who lost his race by, I think, like 100 votes or something like that. So, I mean, they're definitely going to focus on the really flippable ones.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, like I haven't heard, how much they're going to focus on us. So I've really had to kind of carve my own path and like, hey, look at this race. You need to get involved. So I've been creating a lot of my own kind of press and my own kind of, forward movement. So I don't know. We'll wait and see. I mean, usually they don't jump in until after the qualifying deadline, which is the summer.
Mm-hmm.
So still to be told. We'll see.
Have you ever seen Breaking Bad?
I love that show.
This is kind of analogous. Do you think being like a civics teacher gives you some special insight into running a campaign, or helps you understand something? Like,
Hell no.
No? Okay.
Hell no. I mean, we have special insight on like, the three branches. I mean, I could recite the Constitution backwards and forwards. Like I know those kind of things, but really they kind of watered down the standards that we teach to our kids, because they don't want people like me coming in and like corrupting their young children's minds with, civic engagement and activism. It's really really dry. It's like, here are the three branches and here is what they do. And, so I try to keep it fun and entertaining, but it's definitely, they definitely don't want to kind of cross those two paths. I couldn't even like tell my kids I was running, until like the last week of school. Like, hey, I'm running. Your parents can vote for me, because we have, as an ethical issue, making sure that we're not overlapping the two.
What is the composition of like the Florida legislature? Is it like very Republican, or is it very purple, or?
No. So for the past 20 years, it has been very red dominated. We obviously had Governor Charlie Crisper, 2 terms. And so right now we have our state Senate is composed of 40 senators. Right now, the Democrats have 17 of those seats, and the Republicans have the remainder. So they still have not a super majority in the Senate anymore, but they still have a lead. And right now, I believe the Florida House of Representatives, the Democrats have 47 seats out of the 120 seats.
Wow. Okay.
So it's, so they definitely, when they go up there, in Tallahassee to fight, they know that they're going to be losing these battles. So it's just, they have to go up and make the bills less bad. So for example, they voted to arm teachers after Parkland. And, so obviously we knew we were going to lose that vote. Teachers are going to be armed in Florida if their school districts choose. And one of the representatives named Chev Jones, he stood up and he was like, okay, we don't like this, but we're going to try to add some great amendments to it to make it a little less bad. And all he asked was that teachers take implicit bias training, just implicit bias training that police officers are supposed to take as well. And the Republican legislature voted it down on implicit bias training. And just, it's little things like that they will not compromise. They will not work with you. So I'm sick and tired of hearing people say, well, you got to work across the aisle. No, you don't. You really don't. You need to just take them out, and you need to start fresh, because it's at the point where we have tried for 25 years to compromise with these people. They don't want to compromise. They attack us. They call us socialists. They do everything under the sun to undermine us. And you know what? It's over. We are taking their seats. You're losing your job. You can go back to Wall Street, wherever you're from, and we are going to run this country, because you can't do it. I mean, right now we have a Florida man running the governor, who's the governor here in Florida, who's opening gyms on Friday. There's people literally protesting because they want to own the liberals so bad. They're protesting by not wearing masks all over the state of Florida. And I'm just like, you know what? Charles Darwin says, go ahead, don't wear your mask. It's fine. But that's how serious it is right now, is that people literally are willing to put their lives of their grandparents and their kids at risk so they can own the left.
Yeah.
No coronavirus. No one's going to tell me to wear a mask. You know what? Welcome to being a woman. Welcome to being gay. Welcome to being black and brown in this country. That's the same thing. They don't, you're all of a sudden being inconvenienced to have to wear a mask to save people, and it's taking too much of your freedom away. Give me a. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. So I'm guessing with the way that the legislature is set up, they probably don't need any Democratic support to pass any legislation at all. They can just like.
Oh, no, they can do whatever they want.
What are, besides the gerrymandering thing, what are like some of the huge issues that you have, or like if you had like your top 3 policy positions that you kind of be gunning for if you were part of the legislature, what would those be?
Well, just really quick, starting with education. Of course, I'm a teacher. I'm going to come up there, like rock this shit and be like, listen, I know what's going on. I'm on the front lines every day. We are the 48th worst paid teachers in the entire country. And that just can't be. You know, we've tried for years to get teachers pay raises so that they can actually afford to be a teacher. And it's just, it's not working. It's not, you know, I think they came out and said, you know what, we're going to pay first year teachers $47,000. We're going to attract new teachers to the profession. We had like 3,500 vacancies starting out the school year. So they want new teachers in. So you're telling me you're going to pay a new teacher the same amount I make, and I've been working for 12 years? That's not going to happen. So definitely we want to address the teacher pay issue. We got to get our schools funded back to the pre-recession levels, because right now they're not. They're still, you know, just saying, you know, you don't need it. You did so well during the recession without it. You can continue this, and we can't. It's not sustainable. So education, number one. Of course, we have to address climate change. They're not taking it seriously, and it's, you know, it's coming towards us. Florida's ground zero. We need to move the state towards 100% renewables. And it's going to be a fight. We're going to be fighting the fossil fuel industry. And I'm ready to take that fight on. And then the third issue, I would say there's so many to choose from. We really need to talk about criminal justice reform in the state of Florida. We are locking up way too many Black and brown people here. And then when they get out, we're not letting them vote because they don't have the money to do it. So there's your poll tax. But we have things like I don't know if you've heard of the felony murder rule.
I have not.
So the felony murder rule is where pretty much if someone commits a crime and you had anything to do with it, even if you weren't at the scene, you could be charged with that same felony. So there's this guy here in Florida who he was out drinking with his buddies. They went back to the house. His buddies took a car and they were kind of joking they're going to go commit some crime. He passes out on the couch, borrowing his car. He's passed on the couch. They commit a crime. Someone ends up getting murdered, getting killed. They all go away and they come back, they arrest him, and he gets life in prison as well because it's his car. So it's like no car, no crime, but because it was his car, they claim that he knew what was going to happen. And so he's just going to serve life in prison because it was his car. And that's what the felony murder rule is. If you're associated with it, you can be, so I think they did actually go back, and now his sentence is reduced to like 25 years, but still like wrong place, wrong time. Like that, that could happen to any of us. So things like that, we just need to really like reanalyze why we are a country that locks up more Black and brown people than anywhere in the world. And we need to really, talk about that. And these private prisons, don't get me started on private prisons because
Is for just in pushing back a little, because I'm curious. It sounds like the spirit of that is. Do you call it the felony murder rule? Is that what you're calling it?
Yeah.
It sounds like the spirit of it is probably okay. Like for instance, if I drive somebody somewhere to go and kill somebody, I should probably be held somewhat liable. Maybe there are just cases.
Yeah, and not if you're at home sleeping and someone uses your car to go. So I think it needs to be. What the problem is there's a sweeping. It's like a mandatory minimums. Like they don't look at case by case basis. And that's what we're really asking for. We're saying, if you go and drive someone and that's happening, then you should be in trouble. But for every case is different. No, if you're sleeping on the couch because you're passed out drunk and your friends go commit a murder with your car, I'm sorry, you don't deserve life in prison. You don't. So it needs to be really a case by case basis. We need to give the judges back their control to make these decisions on their own and not have the state legislature, make these sweeping kind of general laws. So I agree with you. Definitely there is a need for it, but we have to reanalyze it because there's so many people being locked up right now that should not be there. People, these drug offenses that should not be there. They need treatment. We have a big, the opioid crisis here in Florida is huge, and we're criminalizing it. And we need to really be treating people.
Mm-hmm. I think it might have been an article that you sent me or something related to you. You mentioned, I think it's set up in Florida right now so that if you are charged with a felony, you serve your time and you come out, you're not actually able to vote until you've paid off like everything related to if you were fined or if you have to pay like court fees or anything. You don't get to vote until all of those things are taken care of, which seems a little bit extreme to me. That's the law as it is right now in Florida.
So that was the law for many years.
Mm-hmm.
We are one of the most restrictive states when it comes to that, as far as taking away a person's right to vote for life unless they, got clemency from the governor. So we thought, taking away your right to vote for life, that's really extreme. You shouldn't have to serve your sentence for the rest of your life like that.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2018, 65% of Floridians voted on something called Amendment 4, which what Amendment 4 was, it says once you serve your time, once you get out of prison, you can earn the right back to vote if you pay off all your fines and fees, like everything's paid for. Awesome. So it was supposed to be kind of we didn't need to make a law because it just was, can't really think of the word right now, but just all you had to do is do that and then you could vote. You didn't have to go through other steps.
Yeah.
Well, my opponent decided, that's not good enough. We need to define what the fines and fees are. And so he wrote a bill that says, okay, I'm just going to define what all of this is. You have to pay off the fines, the fees, the restitution, pretty much everything. Now, that wasn't really what the amendment said. The amendment actually said you have to complete all of your terms of your sentence. So terms of sentence is not exactly the same thing as all of your fines and fees, because some of your fines and fees that are not related to your sentence might be thrown on there. And that's what we were talking about. Because we know a lot of places around Florida, they do tack on these extra added charges and fines that had nothing to do with your sentence. So a lot of people are calling this a poll tax. It is going through the court because it doesn't really have anything to do with, we have to think about the victims. Well, no, because we do think about the
court costs or some weird thing are paid. Yeah.
The thing is, it's like, let's say I'm a rich felon, and I get out of prison and I can just pay all these fines and fees, then I can vote. Mm-hmm. A person that gets out and did the same exact crime, but they just didn't have the money. So it's really not a matter of we have to punish them. You're punishing the poor people. So I think what we need to say, and we're not saying that people don't have to pay these off. Of course, we want them to pay, but the right to vote shouldn't be dangled in front of them like a carrot. They should have to do both. When you buy a house, you don't have to walk up and pay your whole mortgage the day you start living in it. We give people a chance to pay it off. So again, we tried to compromise with them. We're like, okay, let's compromise. How about we put them on a payment plan? And if they show that they're making payments, let them vote. They wouldn't even do that. So it's really about voter suppression. They know if we can get 1.4 million we call them returning citizens. If we get them voting, Republicans are losing all their races. They don't want them voting. So
there's 1.4 million people in Florida right now that have restricted access to vote.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Jeez. Going back down your three things roughly that you said was like education, climate change, criminal justice reform. For education, not to deep dive too much into this. So education is a really interesting one for me because I know that the U.S. has so many weird problems and everybody around the world is constantly trying to figure out like how to do education better. You mentioned like teacher wages. Are there any other what's like a simple change you could make to the education system, say in Florida, that you think would be good? And then if you had like a dream change that you could make that would be like maybe impossible, but if you could do something totally different, what one of each of those things? I'm curious.
Okay, so I think that one thing that we could do is that we need to end the over testing. I mean, that's something simple that we can do right away. Mm-hmm. I think that, I've been teaching for about 12 years now, and I see, how much emphasis is put on testing, especially on like how much I'm going to get paid and what my evaluations are going to be. And it's ridiculous. When we saw what happened with coronavirus shutting down the schools, what was the first thing they took away was all of the testing, all the state testing got canceled. Mm-hmm. So like, okay, cool. So it's really not that important, huh? And so I really think ending the testing so that teachers can actually teach kids. We have to stop teaching to the test. It's insane that kids are so anxious, and they're just, 11, 12 years old, and they're worried about these state exams that they have to take and whether or not if they pass, if they're going to be a reading level 1 or 5. It's, we just need to be able to teach kids. And one thing I think we should bring back that I think would really help with kids' mental health, we need to bring back art programs. Like, we don't have art class in my school. We have music in some schools, but that was the first thing that they cut when they slashed budgets with art programs. So we're talking about creative art, music, just all these things that kids like need this outlet, and they don't have it. And now they're shooting up schools because they don't have a way to express themselves. And I really think we need to that would be my dream, is that every school has different programs for kids. It's not so focused on just those basic core classes, but we have a variety of things for kids to do. Because right now we treat them like robots. We're like, come in and, math and reading and science, and this is the only important things. And it's not. There's so much more that kids need to express themselves. And, they're going to be, once they turn 18 or once they become adults and they're stuck in this, they have to work for the rest of their lives doing this stuff. Like, we got to let kids be kids, and treating them as if they're already working in corporate America when they're 12 years old, that doesn't cut it for me. And, so sometimes, I do cut corners a little bit, and I definitely try to have fun in my classroom with my kids. I mean, we're still learning, of course, but I don't really give tests. I just try to make it a fun environment for them.
Some sort of federal, bar to pass at the end of a grade is probably okay. Ensuring that they're reading at a certain level or can do math at a certain level is, yeah. I was lucky. I got to go through, or lucky or unlucky, depending on how you say it. I got to go through private school growing up, so I'm not as aware with some of the public systems. But I do remember in school, teachers, our final exams would be significantly different from the AP exams, for instance, because they would say there's important stuff we'd like to cover. This is really cool. I'm going to go over that. But for the test, you need to know this and this and this for the test. And it seemed like some of the better teachers that I had, seem to have very negative attitudes towards you got to know this for the test. You need to know this for the test. But this is really cool, so we're going to spend some more time on this.
Yeah,
you got to know this for the test.
I did the same thing. I would blame a lot of the boring shit on the test. I'd be like, guys, I promise you, I don't want to teach you this. Who gives a shit about the Articles of Confederation? I mean, we're done with it. We got rid of it. Now we have the Constitution. Sure. But it's going to be on the test.
Sure.
So you got to know the 7 weaknesses. Seriously? But, we do it.
The total lack of art programs seems pretty astounding to me. Do you just have art rooms that are just sitting collecting dust, or would these schools need to buy it all again, or no, they're just there and not being utilized?
No, there's rooms. They can have that. I mean, I remember when I was in middle school, I had this elective wheel where I got to do shop. So I got to cut stuff with saws and sand stuff, and I loved it. We had a technology, we had art where we actually making art. We had all these great things, and I teach middle school now, and there's none of that. There might be a robotics program here, or, the music class here, but there's not a variety. And I just, and I try to incorporate as much art into my classroom as possible. Social studies, it's a little bit easier to do that. So I always offer artistic projects that kids can do to show me that they know the 3 branches, or show me that they understand who John Locke and Montesquieu are. I mean, but, so we have to, as teachers, we have to get really creative on how we incorporate that stuff that they've taken away from us.
So for a quick thing, how do you feel about private schools, or I know you brought up voucher stuff before. My understanding is that with the way that some of these voucher programs work, you can basically use them to take funding away from public schools. I guess what is your stance on voucher schools or private schools, or how that plays out right now in the state of Florida?
So I definitely think that voucher school, charter schools and private schools, have a place in our, they have a place here. I'm not trying to push them out and say we don't need you at all. Of course, if you're a religious family and you want to send your child to a religious school, go for it. That's awesome. But right now what's happening is that we are allowing our public school dollars to be sent to these schools at the expense of our public schools. And that is not right, because we can't hold them accountable. They don't have the same standards. We don't know what they're doing at these schools. If you're going to use public dollars, the least you can do is be accountable to us and let us know what's going on in these schools. And also, you can't discriminate. I'm sorry, you cannot discriminate against children if you're taking in public dollars for your school. And we have found cases and evidence here in Florida of schools that specifically will state on their website, if you are an LGBTQ kid or your parents are gay, you can't come to this school. And it's but you take in public dollars. So what do you mean? And so we tried in the state legislature, we tried to pass a bill. All the bill said was, if you are taking public funds and you're a private school or charter school, you cannot discriminate against LGBTQ or whatever. You can't discriminate at all. And that didn't get voted in. The Republicans said no. And it's just you just get really disheartened at that point. So yeah, if we need to help out these schools, sure, let's send them money. But first, we need to make sure we're fully funding our public schools. The problem is, and I've kind of made this case many times, is that there is a cycle happening here in Florida. So what that cycle is step one, they're going to defund our public schools. Just don't give them money. Just don't do it. And then step two is they're going to say, oh, look at these schools struggling. And we're going to struggle because we're going to fail to fill positions. We're going to be overcrowding our classrooms. We're not going to be making the grades. They test us and give us grades. And then once that happens, then they can justify, oh, schools are failing. They're failure factories. Why invest in them? And then let's take that money and now we're going to give it to the private school. So it's this big scam that is meant to set us up for failure. They want public schools to fail. And I know I shouldn't say this, and it's very controversial.
This is a Republican tale as old as time. I mean, we kind of see it happening with the ACA, right? Where it's like, we don't really give it all the proper tools in the beginning. Well, look, it kind of sucks. Now we get rid of the mandate, and then it slowly will tumble down. Well, told you, it never was going to work. Yeah.
It's literally like taking a car that you own and taking out the engine and taking out everything that makes the car work, and then turning around saying, this is a piece of shit car. Look at this. We can't invest in this car. So like they literally are doing it to themselves. And, and that's what we're trying to stand up against and what we're trying to let parents know. Because a lot of parents don't know. And I think that they would want to know this. And we're not trying to do what the Republicans are doing. Republicans are trying to pit public schools against private schools, make us fight with each other so they can get away with it. We're not doing that. We're going to bring the private schools in. We're going to bring the charter schools in. We're going to work together because every single child at the end of the day deserves to have a really good education. Right now, charter schools and private schools in Florida, only 10% of the kids go there. And that's awesome. But what about the other 90% that are mostly Black and brown children too, that are being left out of this voucher program? We're giving money to voucher program kids that no offense, their parents are really rich. They can afford it. They can afford to just pay. They just want to take what's theirs. And it's like, come on.
Yeah, that's kind of, so I live in California now, but I've only been here for like a year and a half. My home state is Nebraska. So I'm more familiar with like the funding of public schools there. I think in Nebraska, I'm pretty sure that if you want to send your kid to a private school, you pay extra for it. But all of our schools there are funded via property taxes. So like your tax money still goes to whatever your school district is. The idea that you could have schools set up where you have some of the most motivated students because they're coming from wealthy families whose parents are going to hound them, when you take all of them out of the public schools and then you put them only in private schools, and then the parents that care the most about their kids' education are now only focused on the private schools and the public schools are just kind of sitting there, seems like a recipe for disaster, right? Is it? It
is, and that's why we have to, that's why we have to invest in our public schools because my opponent will talk about it all the time. We're giving parents choice. It's their choice. And it's like, bitch, no, because I'm going to tell you right now, like the schools are the ones choosing your kids. And second, wouldn't real choice be if every single school was so amazing that a parent was like, well, damn, like, I don't know which school to send my kid to. But what you hear is oh, is that a good school or a bad school? Like that's the first thing I always hear when people move to the neighborhood is they always ask, the first thing that realtors say that the parents ask is, are the schools good? Is that a good school or a bad school? Why is that even a question? Why is every school not a good school? Are you kidding me? And, you go to East Tampa, I live in Northwest Hillsborough County. I'm not going to lie. It's pretty affluent out here. The schools are kick-ass. They're awesome. But you go to the other side of the county, like a 20-minute drive, you have schools that are struggling so much because, again, the property taxes aren't very much there.
Yeah.
And you have kids being left behind. And these are the kids that they're like, oh, well, just use a voucher and send your kid across the district.
Not everybody can drive a half hour every day.
Do that. These parents are working 2 and 3 jobs. So what's going to be economically best for them is keeping their kids in their neighborhood school so they don't have to send kids to 5 different places. And I feel really bad for those parents because they want to give their kids the best opportunity. So when these vouchers get waved in front of them, like, oh, come take this voucher, these parents are going to take it and you can't blame them. But that's what we need to stop. We need to stop bleeding the public schools so that all schools are good. And that's what we're fighting for. And I'm not going to stop until I'm not going to stop fighting for that.
Yeah. I remember in Omaha, it was the same thing in Omaha. So I had to move so that my kid could be in the best school district because the one that I was in was not very good, which is sad to me because I know that not everybody can just buy a house in a school district for their kid. I remember in Omaha, they had it, I think they called it like one school district was a plan they tried to push for all of like 30 seconds where all of the funding for all of the schools across the entire county, I think, would be shared, and people were not happy with that. And they pushed back because all of the wealthy school districts didn't want to lose their funding to go to the poor ones.
Yeah.
Like, nope. Yeah. It's a huge.
So, yeah. It shows you that. It shows you as soon as like these wealthy schools are threatened with not getting all the funding and resources they need, it's like, well, welcome to the other side. Like,
Yeah,
welcome.
seriously,
Like,
yeah.
this is the way it is in other schools. So it's, it's a big issue. And I think just the fact that I'm a teacher and I'm running for office, I mean, a lot of people, they know this is my lane. They know this is what I'm going to be going up, with a sledgehammer to fight when I win this seat. And we just need, it's insane to me that we don't have teachers at the tables when education laws are being made. We don't have doctors at the tables when laws about healthcare are being made. Like that, what? Like that's just the way it needs to be. People need to be at these seats, and we need to be talking to people that are being most affected by this. So I'm going to make sure I'm not going to just go up there as like a white woman with privilege telling everybody what I want them to do. I'm going to bring people in that are going to be these voices that are going to finally have a seat at the table, and they're going to speak for these issues, because I can't speak for every issue. I need people that are in the thick of this, that are being affected every day by this, to be the ones that have a voice. So that's what I'm running for. I want to be kind of like the funnel of that voice that others can, tell the legislator what's up.
Well, the second thing you brought up was climate change. So this is a really big doomer topic because it always seems so depressing to talk about. I've got friends I think that live in South Beach that have told me that they've talked about like reinforcing parts of the island to like bring it up more. It's such a out there topic that unfortunately isn't going to be out there too much more. What kind of like mitigation is Florida? Has Florida started taking anything seriously insofar as like what are we going to do when some of these places maybe become a little bit uninhabitable? Or
it's so funny because Florida, we are always talking about how our tourism industry is number one, and we have to protect our tourism industry because that's how we make all of our tax dollars, because we're such a low tax state. And then they don't realize that when these hurricanes come and destroy our beaches and destroy these places where the tourists go and destroy these businesses, then they're not going to get those dollars. So when you talk to Republicans about climate change, you got to talk about it in economics.
For them to care about it, yeah.
Yeah, for them to care. When you talk to, Democrats and people that just care about others, especially when you talk about climate justice and injustice, there's a lot of people in our communities that they can't just pick up and pack up their bags and afford to go to a hotel if there's a hurricane, or afford to move if their house gets destroyed by a hurricane. There's a lot of people still suffering from Hurricane Katrina. Yeah. And you have to think about those things. And so Florida's really doing nothing. They are doing nothing. They are not addressing it. They are not talking about it. So it's really up to, we have some really great local, like mayors, for example, like in Miami and St. Pete, that are working really hard to address these issues. Tampa just added like, a resiliency position. So local governments are adding climate change, resiliency officers are calling them, or something like that. And they're trying to address like, what can our cities do? I've been working really close with a group called the Sierra Club, which I'm sure you know who they are. The Sierra Club has a program called Ready for 100. And what Ready for 100 is we go to local governments, we talk about climate change, and we say, how can your government here in this local little community save money and at the same time preparing to battle climate change? And we get them to vote on being 100% renewable in their city by a certain year. Usually the year is 2050, we tell them. And so right here in District 64, Safety Harbor, which is right on the water, they voted a couple months ago to be a Ready for 100 city. They're the 9th city in Florida, the 126th in the country. And what that just means is that they're going to take actions from here on out to get closer to 100% renewable. So whether that be purchasing your buses or your vehicles to be electric, whether that be making sure that your building codes are now more green, just any little things that we can do to bring down the amount of fossil fuels in our atmosphere, as a little city, you're like, well, what can we do? But if we're all doing this together, then it makes a big difference. And we're going to have to do that little by little. We're going to have to go city by city until we get a government in office that actually gives a shit about our kids and about the future of this country. Because, it's not happening right now. It's just on the back burner, and that's dangerous.
Sure. And then for climate change is always a hard one to talk about because it's always so like catastrophic, and it seems like there's just not the political will. Yeah.
But did you see with coronavirus though, like how everyone was staying at home and the air was cleaner and off the charts? I think even in LA and California, like they were recording how much carbon monoxide is in the air and all this stuff, and things were just really clean. Like the rivers were, and it just shows you what we can do just by staying inside for a couple weeks. Imagine what we can do if we actually work towards this issue. This is a problem that's barreling our way, and we are just not addressing it. Yeah. We are to wait until it's too late, and then we're going to have to deal with all of the implications after that.
Mm-hmm. For the final thing you brought up, we talked a little bit about it, but for like criminal justice reform, I know that you mentioned kind of, what you consider, what most people probably consider a poll tax in terms of having to pay off stuff. Do you have in order to pay off stuff to vote, do you have stances related to like legalization of marijuana or other types of major like prison reforms or whatever in Florida?
Yeah. So I was actually endorsed by a PAC. They're called, like Citizens for Common, Purpose or whatever it is. I don't even know the name of it, but I was endorsed by them. But what is real criminal justice and angry at the Republican
my God, I'm so
Party
sorry.
most of the
Hello?
time. I can be angry at the Democratic Party.
Whoa, can you hear me?
Am I here? Are you here?
Oh my God, okay.
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, I'm really sorry. For whatever reason, it cut out as soon as you started answering that question. Okay, so you were just saying that you were endorsed by a PAC, and then it cut out after that. I'm sorry, what were we at after that?
Yeah, so this is a PAC that they're brand new, but what they are, the chair of the PAC is a Republican running for the state Senate. So, he wants to be very clear. His name is Christopher Cole. He wants to bring Democrats and Republicans together that would be willing to work on issues in a nonpartisan way. So some of the things they're working on is legalizing marijuana, because I think that's something that we can, there's a lot of Republicans and Democrats that want that, and criminal justice reform. So not only, just ensuring that we are not just filling up the prisons, just to fill them up, but we're actually making sure that we're saving money and we're reforming the system. So right now there was a bill that we tried to pass through is a gain time bill. So pretty much what it says that if you do your time and you have good behavior, you can get time off your sentence. Right now, I think it's like 60% off of your sentence. So they're looking to, for low criminal offenders that maybe it was like small drug offenses and things like that. We're trying to increase that gain time and say, you know what, we don't need people that were caught with, marijuana or whatever it was to be sitting in prison, costing taxpayers dollars and ruining their lives because they were caught with some weed or with, so we're really trying to refocus how we sentence people and make sure there's more opportunities for diversion programs and things like that.
Sure. In terms of, I'm kind of curious at a personal level, especially when we talk about like criminal justice stuff. Do you ever worry about like, so let's say that you finish the legislature thing. Let's say that you don't win the campaign. Do you ever worry when you go back to school that like people would ever attack you with this, or that this would have impacts on your job? So say for instance, like you're in school and like a parent comes at you and like, oh, you're the marijuana teacher. You're the one that wants to let murderers out of jail. I don't want you near my kids. Do you ever have to think about like, I wonder if this will have an impact on my career as a teacher in terms of the positions that you run for? Or is that just not as big a problem as some people would imagine it would be? Or
that's like, no one's ever asked me that before. I mean, you do think about it. I do think, what would parents think? But at the end of the day, I feel like I'm fighting for things that are the right thing. If that was their child that was put in prison for the wrong reasons or locked up because they were sleeping on the couch. I mean, I try to look holistically at everything. Like, of course, like I care about victims' rights and I care about victims as well. But we also have to recognize that our country, that we lock up too many people and we don't do enough to help them. The school to prison pipeline is real. And I'm just trying to do everything I can to stop that from happening. If we look at a lot of people that are in prison, they're not all bad people. Yeah, we got murderers. We got to keep the murderers out. We got to, but we definitely need to look at the system as a whole. So yeah, I mean, I worry about it, but it's something I'm willing to put my reputation on the line. Like I just won Teacher of the Year at my school this year because of the work I'm doing.
Okay.
So
Congratulations.
if they really want to, thank you. So I mean, if they really want to come at me, there's so many things that like we could talk about. Like, okay, you're mad at me for wanting to, legalize marijuana, but you're not mad at people being ripped from their children at the border. Like we have to talk about priorities here because I just feel like there's so much more to worry about than it's like a little teacher running for office and fighting for these issues. I just don't see it happening. If it does, I'll accept it. If I have to go to a different profession, I'll do, if I get kicked out of teaching or something. But I think that's the problem. Teachers have always been seen as the people that teach your children, and they stay out of politics. And, and now that we're trying, we've been walked over for so long that teachers are speaking out. We actually have 3 teachers running for office just from my county here. And I'm sorry, like, I'm willing to risk my job to do what's right. If that means I don't get to be a teacher anymore, okay. But I'm going to keep fighting for my kids one way or the other. So.
Okay, cool. Are there any other issues or anything you want to bring up that you feel are important that you want to discuss you haven't gotten a chance to go over here? Or?
No, I think we covered a lot of it. I mean, I just really hope that people, really take my advice and just pay attention to your state legislators. Like, look up to your state legislators. Just, you can type it up and see who it is, see what they're doing. Because so many people have not done that. And if they would know the type of things that these state legislators are pulling on you, you would probably want to get more involved and more activated. So.
Do you have what's if you could direct people to certain social medias, what is the most important to you? Or do you have like a hub for all of your stuff, or like a Twitter or a TikTok?
Yeah, we have it all. So we definitely Twitter and Instagram. We have TikTok. I think at JH4FL is our that's our Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, which nobody really uses Facebook anymore, but we're still on there. But we have a TikTok, which I don't even remember what the TikTok is. But we put some really fun videos on there kind of calling out the state legislature as well. But yeah, so you can go to jessicaharrington.org. That's our website where we kind of keep things up to date, and you can learn about what we're doing, and hopefully we're going to win the seat, and we're going to work really hard. We have about 6 months left to pull off the biggest upset in Florida, and so we'll see what happens.
Is it too late for any other Democrats to register against you, or is it like, are you confirmed like you're going to be the only one going up against James? Or?
It's not too late technically, but we only have about 3 weeks until qualifying deadline starts and then ends. So if someone really, wanted to, they could, but I just don't see that happening because of coronavirus. I mean, who's going to be able to get in and do the things they need to do?
Sure.
And we already have the petitions to qualify, and we have the community support. So you're welcome to come challenge me, but you're going to go down. I'm going to, sweep the floor with you. So,
sure.
So yeah, it's pretty much almost 99% guaranteed that I'll be the one challenging, be the one up against him on November 3rd, which is our election date.
Are you, do you think, are you going to be able to like bully him into like debating or anything like that? Or is that like pretty normal for local politics? Or do you have town halls where you guys call each other out, or how does that work?
So the one town hall he showed up at 2018, it was very controlled. Like, it was like, okay, they had someone up and he was allowed to come up and give his 3 to 5 minutes or whatever it was. And then I was able to come up. So it's definitely very controlled. There's never really like actual debates. It's all very controlled. I could see myself getting in trouble, being at one of these things and just start calling him out on stuff. But then it makes me look like the crazy candidate. So
Yeah.
I have to be just very careful in that. And so I have other people. I have attack dogs that can get on him that don't involve me. But I'll just throw this out there really quick. So in 2011 in Florida, the unemployment system was totally kind of transformed to set up to fail. So under then Governor Rick Scott and James Grant, my opponent, who was a newly elected legislature, they voted pretty much to gut the unemployment system. They made sure benefits were the smallest in the country, $275 per week, where it remains today, regardless of inflation. They made it the shortest amount of weeks that you can claim for benefits. I believe it's only 12 weeks. And they made it really, really hard to even get on the system. So now, fast forward, it's coronavirus. People are trying to get on. There's like 1.1 million people in Florida have tried to claim unemployment. There's still a ton of people that have not gotten anything, even though they've done everything they were supposed to do. They stayed home, flattened the curve, and they're not getting anything, and they're struggling. So there was a special session voted on last week. Every single Republican voted no on a special session to come back to Tallahassee to fix the system. So they literally created this problem. They won't come back to fix it. Well, I went to a Feeding Tampa Bay event last weekend, and lo and behold, who walks up to hand out food to people in need is the Senate President, Bill Galvano. So, being who I am, I walked up to him and was like, hey, that's really strange that you're here feeding people that are in need, but you voted no on a special session last week to go back and fix the system where if people were getting their money, maybe they wouldn't have to be in this line.
Mm-hmm.
And I got ushered out of there so fast. Like, they wouldn't even let him answer. I was in so much trouble.
Sure.
And then they put me off the corner. And that's why I shouldn't run for office, because I can't stand the hypocrisy. And, it was just awful. But I was glad that I was able to get my piece in.
Yeah, that's nice. It reminds me of no, that's good. There are a lot of there's a lot of the times where you bring up rhetorically, like, you bring up a lot of things where it's like, it's funny that people are concerned about this thing, but like, if you look at some of these other things, like, where are your priorities at? Like, people are worried that some non-violent drug offender is going to get out of prison, and then meanwhile you look at stuff going on the border, or people being stripped of their health care, and it's like, your priorities are in such a strange area right now. Yeah, it's really obnoxious. Just a final random personal question. Are you in Florida? Are you guys still teaching in classrooms? Or I know, like, in Nebraska, we changed to like distance teaching. They all use like iPads and stuff. Do kids actually still go to school in Florida to finish out the year, or are you guys all remote teaching?
Yeah, no, we are actually, every school in Florida was shut down March 15th, right? We were actually, in Hillsborough County at least, we were on spring break when school shut down. So literally the last day I saw my kids was when, like, the last day right before spring break. I was like, hey, bye guys, see you after spring break. And that was the last time I ever saw them. I didn't know that I'd never come back to see them again. Didn't know the school year was going to be shut down for the rest of the year. So we have been doing the online learning. The kids are required to check into the system. We are required to post assignments for them, and then just communicate, throughout the week with them. And we can have Zoom meetings. We can do however we want to do it. But we have really seen the inequalities in our education system. There's so many kids that didn't have computers, didn't have internet. There's so many kids, so we fixed all that mostly, but then there's still, you see that there's so many kids that just, they need a teacher in front of them. They need that connection. They need, there's some kids that are flying through this. They're brilliant. They can do whatever you want online. They're done. There's some kids that are really struggling, that really are just in tears every week because they just wish they were back in school, and we're like the safest place for them to be in some of these households. And so, it's heartbreaking, but again, we're doing what we have to do. We're still right now debating in the district, what is it going to look like in August? Are we going to even be able to reopen? Are we going to have to stagger it? Like, how the hell are we going to social distance in a classroom? So there are so many unknowns right now, but I just really feel bad for our kids. And I really miss them. And it's not, it has not been easy, this online teaching for the past few weeks.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, I really appreciate you coming on. The most important thing, do you have, I know the Act Blue site usually has like donation links or something for like a campaign.
It does. Yes. We need donations. If everyone just donated $1, that would really piss my opponent off, but yeah, if you go to jessicaharrington.org, there is a little donate button, and you can donate $1, or $5. And, we're definitely going to need some funding to take this guy out. Again, he's corporately funded. We have publicly stated we're one of the only candidates in the entire Hillsborough County area that will not take corporate donations. We don't take corporate PAC money. We don't, even if Publix wants to donate, we won't let them. And a lot of candidates on both sides of the aisle actually do take these corporate donations. So we're people funded all the way. So yeah, if you could go to jessicaharrington.org, donate a couple dollars. We actually had, I think, out of the 50 states, we've had people from 32 of the 50 states donate so far. Cool. So if you live in North Dakota or South Dakota, we don't have donations from there yet. So
Gotcha. Cool. All right. Awesome. Well, hopefully you get a few more after this.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I really appreciate it.
If you can debate my opponent, just like invite him and debate him, I would love you forever, because he is so awful. You would have a really good time.
Yeah, I'm trying to reach out more to Republicans. Yeah, but it's harder.
Just trick them to think it. Like, just trick them and be like, yeah, we're gonna talk about, he's endorsed by the NRA. You could pretend to be the NRA or something. I mean, I don't know, but
that only works one time, unfortunately. But right, because then after that, people know. But yeah, maybe we'll see. I really appreciate the conversation. Okay. I wish you the best of luck in your race. Yeah, good luck.
Thanks. All right, bye.
Yeah, bye. There you go, guys. Tell her OnlyFans is the best way to raise money. Can you guys stop being cringy coomers in chat? We got a lot of cringy. We got a lot of ultra cringy coomers. Slow down. Holy shit. I am no longer a materialist, okay? Or physicalist. I have